everyone, this is Julia.
And this is Chris, and this is episode number 29 of Mixology Talk Podcast.
Now, we live in Northern California, and I fully acknowledge that our winters are very mild compared to pretty much everywhere else in the world. But I'm going to own it. I'm a huge wimp, and it's freaking cold.
Seriously, she looks like an Eskimo right now, and the thermostat in our house is set to 66. It's not really normal. She looks like that kid from Christmas Story, you know, the little brother that...
Hey, wait a minute. So today we're going to be talking about the other way of warming up, in case you don't want to dress up like an Eskimo like I am, a.k.a. firewater.
I see what you did there. Firewater.
So if you're going to be drinking in the winter, which, let's be honest, we will, here are a couple ideas for great cocktail flavors and great types of cocktails that you can use so it aligns well with you staying warm.
So yeah, first you can have cold cocktails with warm wintry flavors.
Yeah, one of the challenges with the winter season is there's not a lot of fruit in season. In the summertime, you've got all kinds of stuff to play with, but in the winter, not so much.
Yeah, it's kind of a desert out there as far as fruit goes for us. So
the one thing you can do is you can often you can find apple and pear, sometimes pomegranate, cranberry, kind of the stuff that you would use to cook a Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe pumpkin, if you could use that in a cocktail.
Maybe turkey.
There you go. You're onto something. These are definitely flavors that you can incorporate into your cocktails, and they're going to work well with the season.
Yeah, and like Julia mentioned, it's one of the hardest seasons for us as cocktail creators because we have to look away from one of the easier ways to incorporate flavor with fruit, and we have to look at other flavors. And typically, one of the ways I start to look for other flavors is kind of match it with what's happening in like the food scene at that time of the year. So with winter and the holidays, you typically see a lot of like much darker flavors and herbs and spices. So like maple and molasses are pretty common this time of the year. Nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger. And you also see, allspice, all those baking spices, you know, you see in a lot of different dishes. And also dark teas, so like rooibos tea, chai, and even English breakfast. You start to see those really kind of dark flavored teas a lot more common this time of the year. So
it makes sense to use those in cocktails. I think I personally absolutely love cocktails that use molasses and especially maple syrup for a sweetener. I think that's a really, really great option. And in contrast to what we said during the episode where we talked about summer flavors, I'm going to go ahead and flip that around and say in the winter, it is time to break out your aged spirits.
Absolutely, yeah. So like in the summer, it makes sense to, you know, the temperature matches the lighter spirits, so you're not going to be drinking heavy Manhattans in the summer. I mean, I probably
Unless
will.
You're Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I love Manhattans. But most people are drinking lighter style spirits, so vodka, gin, some of the lighter tequilas out there. And then in the winter, obviously, you know, you want those richer, heavier spirits, kind of more like a comfort spirit, really.
Exactly. And they align well with the baking spice flavors we just talked about. When you age spirits in oak, you get that vanilla, you get that a little bit of that molasses, you get a little bit of that maple.
You get those baking spice flavors from the barrel and stuff.
Exactly. So it really works well with the season. So I absolutely love switching over to dark spirits this time of year.
Yeah. And so another option is to skip the ice entirely and checking out room temperature cocktails.
So originally, when I was talking to Chris about what do you drink room temperature, I was thinking of just drinking spirits neat, like a whiskey neat, for example. But Chris said there's actually a type of cocktail. I'm doing the air quotes right now.
And it's funny because she's holding a microphone in one hand, so she's only doing an air quote.
It's true. Awkward air quote here. But it's not actually a cocktail, and Chris will tell you why in a minute, but it is served room temperature.
Yeah, so it's more of a cocktail family, and so like when you look at a cocktail, you can break things into certain categories of cocktail families. Like a cocktail is actually a cocktail family, which is kind of weird and a little bit crazy to think about. But
think of it as a genre.
Yeah, exactly. So a cocktail is typically have the ingredients of spirits, bitters, sugar, and water of some form, either in a form of ice with a melted dilution or with water actually added to it. Now, a scaffa is not technically a cocktail for all the cocktail nerds out there, but it is like a room temperature mixed drink. So you're not adding any ice, you're not adding any water to it. It's just the spirit in its natural form at room temperature.
Let's be honest, though. Nowadays, I think any mixed drink, it seems to be colloquially called a cocktail. There's a lot of drinks without bitters that we use that word for, so I'm going to call it a cocktail.
Yeah, me too. That's what I usually do.
Now, I've seen rumors, and I Googled it, so I saw it on the internet. It must be true.
Gotta be.
True. I've seen rumors that the name scaffa could either come from an Old English word for cupboard, aka you drink it right out of the cupboard, or maybe the guy who invented it was called scaffa. Not very creative. But it seems to me that people have been mixing things together with moonshine to make it taste better, with or without ice, since pretty much the first moonshine came around. So, as far as I'm concerned, you can call it whatever you want.
Exactly, yeah. And for the purists out there, you can just order your whiskey neat. That'll warm you up without cooling you down.
I like that. That's a good catchphrase.
Ooh, t-shirt.
T-shirt time. Definitely. So you don't have to get complicated and create a scaffa, which actually I forgot to mention. All it is basically liquor, a liqueur, and then you can also add like syrups, things like that. So it is exactly as simple as it sounds, but it's really fair game on what you put in it. But you can just keep it simple and go ahead and drink your spirits neat. So, Chris, can anything be served neat?
Well, technically, yeah, but I don't know too many people that actually like to drink their vodka or gin at room temperature.
Not since college, at least.
Yeah, and arguably, anytime you pack liquor in a flask and you're drinking it neat, this is something that I've been guilty of, that's for sure.
Absolutely. It's kind of how flasks work.
Exactly.
So we won't judge you. You can drink whatever you want at room temperature, but if you want people to not think you're weird, go ahead and put it in a flask.
Yeah, exactly. So finally, you could always just go ahead and enjoy a warm cocktail.
You totally saw this coming, didn't you?
I hope so. So when I think of warm drinks, I usually think of them in two different categories. So putting alcohol into a warm, non-alcoholic drink, like a tea or a coffee, and true warm cocktails.
So for the first version, there's a couple classics. These are the ones that everybody's familiar with. You take coffee and you put Baileys in it. You get a Baileys in coffee, really complicated. You take hot chocolate, you put peppermint schnapps in it, another good option. Another one that Chris told me about is called a Karaoke coffee, which is made with, it's a coffee which you add brandy, Kahlua, and creme de cacao. I have not tried this, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's one of the older styles of cocktails coming like out of the 50s and 60s. It's a great drink.
And if you order it via text message, your phone will almost certainly autocorrect it to karaoke coffee, which could be fun.
And if you have more than two, you're actually technically obligated to start a karaoke session.
It's true. It's the rules. You should know that.
The drinking rules. And I remember that when we were at, I think it was Tales last time, that you went down and had an Amaro of some form in coffee and said you really enjoyed it.
Yeah. One of the morning sessions, one of the morning tasting rooms was dedicated to kind of tasty things you can put in coffee. So I spent a good deal of time there, not surprisingly. And I had an Amaro in coffee, which I'll be darned if I can remember which Amaro it was, but it was fantastic.
Now, there are other true warm cocktails that a lot of people have probably heard of. These are included in like the hot toddy, a hot buttered rum, something that's really famous here in San Francisco for some reason, the Irish coffee.
Probably because it's always cold here.
Right. Well, and the Buena Vista is one of the bars that originated and is very, very famous for their Irish coffee is in San Francisco.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's also another one that's not very well known, but it is a really fantastic drink to enjoy during the holidays, and that's called a Tom and Jerry.
Not the cartoon, folks.
No.
Unfortunately.
But essentially what it is a warm eggnog served with brandy and rum. It could be different spirits as well, but it's a really cool kind of piece of Americana history where I think it was back in like the 40s and 50s. This was like a form of punch. That it had its own special Tom and Jerry punch bowl, and it was kind of this elaborate setup and production to make a Tom and Jerry, and they usually only consumed it during the holidays.
It sounds like an amazing drink to have at a holiday party or, on Christmas Day even. Yeah,
it's something definitely very special, and even if you're looking for a really cool Christmas gift for a cocktail enthusiast in your life, they actually have Tom and Jerry sets, bowls, and cups that come with it, kind of like a punch bowl, and they're kind of rare. So if you look up online on eBay or even, Craigslist or something like that, you may be able to come across one of these, and it's a really cool piece of like cocktail history.
Yeah, and they look really neat too. So it's definitely worth looking up. So if you are going to be making a hot drink with booze, is there anything you should keep in mind?
For me, like with hot cocktails, one of the things I usually notice is when you warm up hard spirits or liquors, they have a tendency to get really aggressive with the alcohol. So when you smell them, it's just so much more volatile and you get just a big whiff of alcohol. So I usually recommend starting off with about half as much as you would normally put in. So with like a regular drink or a cocktail, it's about 1.5 ounces. I'll start off with about 3/4 of an ounce of spirit and slowly add a little bit more until I get the right balance that I'm looking for. A full 1.5 ounces, depending on how much liquor or mixers in there, can be really, really aggressive.
Yeah, I believe it. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So there are your options. Winter flavors in your drinks. You can go ahead and stick with barrel-aged spirits, room temperature cocktails, drink your spirits neat, or just go ahead and make yourself a hot drink.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I'm feeling warmer already.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm ready for a cocktail, a warm cocktail.
That's
now.
for sure.
So next week is actually Christmas Eve around here. And if you're going to be leaving milk and cookies out for Santa, you definitely want to come back and listen to the next podcast.
Wait a minute. Are we making cookies?
Not quite, but you're going to have to listen to find out.
So for all the notes from today's show, head on over to mixologytalk.com/29.
And by the way, I highly recommend those little tiny balls of booze for stocking stuffers.
Ooh, that's a good idea. You should definitely get me some.
We'll see. I'm not sure. But thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.